Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up tonight. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 group. Let me just go through some quick housekeeping and then I will get started. This is technically a Zoom meeting, not a webinar, and I only tell you that is because you can actually unmute yourself if you have a question. But right now everybody has come and muted. You can also put a video on, which is just sometimes nice so that I can see faces, because it's nice to see people's faces rather than the black boxes. And this is recorded and you'll receive a link to the recording tomorrow. You can put questions in chat. I will try and look at questions while I'm going through the slides tonight, but I've got a lot that I'm trying to get through, so I might just look at the questions at the end and try and answer as many as we can. So before I pull up the slides, I'd love to hear if you can put in chat where you're watching from, what year your student is in high school, and if you started to do any research on colleges and particularly on merit scholarships. Okay, we've got sophomores and juniors. Okay, look, you guys, it's a perfect time to start this. I have to be honest, I'm going to go through a lot tonight. I combined two presentations. I don't know if I can get through it all, so I might go a little fast, but I wanted to give you a lot of good information. Thank you all. Yeah, a lot of people who are sophomores and juniors, makes sense. An eighth grader and a freshman. So good for you. You're here on the early side, but this will be really helpful. Okay, thanks for sharing. I'm going to share my slides. Oops, let's see. Done. Let's put this into slideshow and get started. Okay, great. Can people just put into chat? Just want to make sure that you can see my screen. Great. Okay. Oops, I'm on the wrong page. Okay. So I didn't actually update the agenda, but basically the three things I want to talk to you guys tonight about is what merit scholarships are. We'll talk about that. And we'll give you some examples of different merit scholarships at different types of colleges. I also want to talk to you about what SAI is. Maybe you know what that is, you don't, but you will when I start talking about it, and how that relates to your college budget and how that relates to merit scholarships. And then the third area is to talk to you about the common data set and how you can use that information to start researching colleges. And all these things fit together. I mean, merit scholarships is the broad topic. Understanding your SAI and college budget is going to help you figure out what types of schools you need to look for relative to merit scholarships. And the common data set is the data you're going to use to find the colleges and merit scholarships. So that's how it fits together. So why do we focus so much, or why do I focus so much on merit scholarships? And it's because if you take a step back, there's really, at this point in most families' journeys to get their student to college and to pay for it, there's three major buckets where money comes from to pay for college. You either are paying, you've saved up money, 529s, or maybe you're going to use some other savings, and that's a big chunk. Or maybe you have some other family who's willing to contribute. But basically, it's money that's coming from the family, whether it's coming from the savings or potentially your current income, because you're able to cut back on expenses and you're going to use that money to pay for college. So that's one big bucket. The second bucket is what I call free money. And free money can either come from the college itself or private scholarships or the government. And the biggest source of free money is really from the colleges themselves. So that's why we focus on it. And colleges give out free money in the form of need-based financial aid or merit scholarships. And so we want to maximize the amount of free money. And there's a saying that we use that says, the largest scholarship that your student's going to receive is from the college that they enroll at. So private scholarships are good. I'm not saying not to do them, but it's really a matter of where you can put your energy and where you're going to get the biggest return. And in my opinion, you will get the biggest return by doing the research that's necessary ahead of time and making sure your students are applying to the right types of colleges that can offer your student money. In addition, if you and your student want to search for private scholarships, go ahead. It's important, and that's going to help to fill in additional financial gaps. But I believe that the biggest source of money that is going to go to most students is from the college itself, if your student's applying to the right set of colleges. And then the third bucket, if you don't have enough money from your family, and when you combine it with free money, if there's still a gap between what you have versus what the college costs, you're going to have to consider loans. And the two big sources of loans are from the government in the form of student loans that your student can take out themselves. And right now, still Parent Plus loans are available. Those are parent loans that you can take out from the government. And then the other source are private lenders. And so my goal, and hopefully your goal, is we want to maximize what you can get from family contributions and free money so that you can either, you don't need to borrow money, or you've reduced the amount of money that you potentially need to borrow. So why is your student's college list so important? Because your student list drives everything. It's going to drive your family's final cost of college, right? Whatever the colleges on your students' list and whatever their costs are, one of those costs is going to be the final cost that you're going to have to pay to send your student to college. Obviously, again, whatever colleges are on your students' lists, those are going to be the ones where they're hopefully going to be accepted to. So you want to make sure that there's a diverse list of colleges, so that there are colleges that you feel pretty confident that they will be accepted to, some that you're pretty confident that you'll at least be able to financially afford. And then if you want to put reaches on the list, that's fine, as long as they're balanced off with more confident colleges that you know, again, your student can get into and you can afford. And then the last piece, and this is particularly for the families with juniors right now, the colleges on your student's college list is also going to drive how much work it takes to apply. So most colleges are on what we call the Common App these days, which is a common platform that colleges use to where your student's going to submit their application, and there is a common essay, a common personal essay that your student's going to write that they only need to upload and submit on the Common App. But where the work starts to pile up is that a lot of schools do have supplemental essays. So some have 3 supplemental essays. So every college that's on your student's list might not be more than just one essay. It may just be the one personal essay, but you don't know until you kind of compile this list and start looking at all of the essays that the college requires. So not to shy away from, that shouldn't prevent your student from applying to a college, but just to recognize that, you know, the colleges on your student's list is also going to determine how much work it's going to take for them to write all these essays and submit the applications. So what is a merit scholarship? It's also called merit aid. It's also called a tuition discount. You know, some schools truly do use it as a tuition discount, where they might set the tuition at, you know, let's say $60,000, but they may give families with need some need-based aid, and they may give families without need some merit scholarship. And if they give 100% of the families without need merit scholarship, to some extent, that's just a discount. But they don't want to lower their tuition because it's a little bit of a marketing game that, you know, they feel that tuition, a certain level of tuition, signals a certain type of prestige. So that's kind of just the business or marketing game that they're in right now. But other schools truly use merit scholarships to attract a higher quality of student, and they're not giving a tuition discount to every student who applies. And we're going to show you how you can look at the numbers and determine that. The big thing about merit scholarships is that it is not dependent on financial need. So unfortunately, a lot of families, even though you feel like you should be deserving of financial need, and I probably can agree that more families should receive financial need, the way the colleges calculate their numbers, a lot of families don't get need-based aid. So the only other way to reduce your cost of college is to find a college that's going to give your student merit scholarships. So that's a benefit of applying to the right type of college that's going to offer your student a scholarship is it's not going to be dependent on need. And why that's also helpful is that whatever scholarship they offer your student, that's the scholarship that's going to be available for 4 years. If your student gets money based on financial need, every year your family's financial situation is going to be reviewed, because every year they're going to check, do you need the same amount of need? Is your financial situation better, or it could be worse, and maybe they increase the amount of aid, but they're going to look at your financial situation every year, and the amount of aid that they give you might change depending on your financial need. With a merit scholarship, whatever they tell you the scholarship is at the beginning, that's what it's going to be for 4 years. A lot of colleges, which I mentioned, are giving out merit scholarships to what I would call the top percentile students. So those colleges are using their merit scholarship money to attract a stronger student. So they might have a academic range which they normally accept a student in, and we'll look at those numbers. It could be based on a GPA or let's say a test score, and let's say most of the students that they accept fall within a 1300 to 1400 SAT score. Well, they might use their merit scholarships to attract more of those students that are in the 1375 to 1400 range. So they want to attract that stronger student and say, hey, you may not have looked at us necessarily, but if you consider us, we'll give you money. And so now that school becomes more attractive to that student because they're willing to give them a scholarship which would reduce their overall costs. I mentioned that the merit scholarships are renewable. The one thing to be aware of is that a lot of scholarships have a certain minimum GPA. In most cases, the GPA could be very easy for a student to achieve. It could be a 3.0. Sometimes colleges use this minimum GPA as a weeding out process. They could make the minimum GPA 3.5. And so you should just be aware of that when your student decides to accept a certain merit scholarship, what the criteria is to make sure it gets renewed every year. The worst situation that you can be in is to have that your student has accepted to go to a certain college that offers them a merit scholarship and reduces your overall costs, and then sometime during the 4 years, they potentially lose their merit scholarship, and all of a sudden that affordable college has become unaffordable because they're no longer getting the scholarship. So it's just something to keep in mind, and making sure you understand all the details around making sure that your student can renew their scholarship every year that they're there. The other important thing is, which I don't have here, is to quite honestly make sure your student graduates in 4 years. Merit scholarships are for 4 years. If by chance your student has to go a 5th year for lots of different reasons, then that 5th year is extremely expensive because there's no merit scholarship for that, and you're paying the full retail price. So we've categorized merit scholarships into 3 buckets or 3 categories. These are not official. These just are categories that I've created over the years to make it more understandable to families. The first one is what I would call automatic. And what that means is your student doesn't have to do anything extra to be considered for the merit scholarship. All they need to do is apply. And those colleges are going to take every application that they receive, and they're going to review it and consider it against any potential merit scholarship criteria they have. Some colleges are very transparent about their criteria for merit scholarships, and I'm going to show you some examples. They have grids, they have charts, it's clear on their website that if your student gets a certain GPA or a certain test score, they're going to receive a certain dollar amount. And so that's great. I love it when those colleges are, that transparent and show all the information ahead of time. And all you need to do is research it and find that information on their website. Other colleges give out merit scholarships, and they might give them out automatically because they're reviewing every application that comes to them, but they're just not transparent about what the criteria is. A lot of colleges use this idea that a student who's going to get merit scholarship should be at the upper range or upper percentile of the academic level of the students that normally enroll, but they don't share what their specific criteria is, at least not on their website. And the reason for that is, quite honestly, they want they want leeway, they want freedom to be able to change things potentially like midstream. So they don't want to make it public about what the criteria is because they might be tweaking throughout the season. That's not great, but we can kind of use data from previous years to estimate what that college might do in the current year. A competitive merit scholarship is kind of what the name implies, is that a student usually for the competitive merit scholarships has to send in an additional application. So they usually, or they have to do an additional essay. So again, this is where more work might be involved. I'll show you some examples. What's really important about the competitive merit scholarships and the talent merit scholarship is that they also usually have deadlines associated with the additional application or additional essays. Or for a talent, it could be that you need to send in a portfolio, or you might need to schedule a date for an audition. And all of those, I can bet you, have deadlines associated with them. And those deadlines are probably different than the deadline for sending in the student's application. So it's really important for you, for your student, to keep track of these deadlines. Of course, I suggest creating some sort of spreadsheet, something where you have the big picture of all the dates that your student has to work towards, and that they have an understanding of what these dates are and how far in advance they might need to start to make sure that they can get all the information together and submit it in time for the deadline. Okay, so here's an example of what I mentioned, an automatic merit scholarship. This is just one school. It's Miami University of Ohio. I've been kind of taking a picture of their grid since 2020, and we can just kind of show you the progression. In the bottom right is what their grid was like on their website in fall of 2020. You can see this is right before the pandemic. They used both a test score and a GPA to determine how much money that they were going to award students. And then as the pandemic came about and test optional kind of took over, a lot of schools took away the test score as a requirement, but a lot of schools still have that. They might be a test optional school, but they might ask for a test score for merit scholarships. And that's an important question to ask. If it's unclear, if it's not listed on their website, you should definitely ask, do I need to submit a test score to be considered for merit? Some schools will say, you don't have to, we're test optional. We will look at applications with or without test scores to be considered for merit. Other schools will say, yes, for merit, we want you to submit test scores. So again, really important to search for that information. And if it's not clear, to definitely ask the admissions officer. But just looking at the progression of this grid, you can see the test scores were taken away, but you can also see from 2021, and I just skipped to 2024 and then to 2025, that the school also changed the GPA ranges. This is their prerogative. This is their model that they're using. They're looking at each year and saying, okay, how did we do? Based on the GPA stratification or the GPA levels that we use to award merit scholarships, did we get enough of the students that we wanted at the different academic levels? Maybe in this case, Miami University felt like they did really well, that they didn't need to have a GPA of 3.9. They could actually increase the GPA, get a stronger student, and give the stronger and use their money to attract an even stronger student. And that's basically what they did by increasing that GPA level. And then you can see from 2024 to 2025, they basically kept it the same. It'd be interesting if you could see this history, but obviously colleges, don't keep previous charts, but to see if they were changing the criteria. And the other thing to note, and I particularly picked Miami University, so you can see they use a weighted GPA. This is a little unusual. Most colleges are using an unweighted GPA because they're trying to compare as much as they can apples to apples. Or they will recalculate the GPA to make sure that the GPA only includes, the 5 core courses. But the reason why I bring this up in general, this is another detail that's important for you to look at as you're looking at schools and looking at if they're being transparent and looking at their GPA that they might be listing on a website. And again, if it's not clear, this is a great question to be asking an admissions officer. I see you listing GPA for different criteria for merit scholarships. It's not clear, is that a weighted GPA or an unweighted GPA, and do you recalculate the GPA? And the reason why this is so important is obviously you want to know that you're looking at the right level. I had a student that we once worked with or came to us after the fact because she thought she was going to get the highest level of a merit scholarship, and she got the second level, and it was because she was using her weighted GPA and the college was using an unweighted version of her GPA. And she still got money, but she didn't get the level of money that she thought she was going to get. So just important to know these types of details as you're doing your research. So here's a quick example of a competitive merit scholarship. And I purposely show on the left USC, which is University of Southern California, because their deadline for merit scholarships is November 1st. It's also their deadline for early action, which is fairly new for them. It's about 2 years old. So if you want to be considered for merit scholarships at USC, you need to apply early action, period. And if you miss that deadline, which, I don't want to say you miss it or you choose or your student choose to apply to the regular deadline, which is December 1st, which is perfectly fine, they will be reviewed, their application reviewed, for admissions to USC, but it won't be considered for merit scholarship. So that's why in this case, it's so important to know what the deadline is. And if applying for merit scholarships is important, then in this case, your student's going to have to make sure that they send in their application and essays by November 1st, period. Usually these schools, particularly like USC, is not lenient about their deadlines. They feel like, and a lot of colleges feel like this is a learning experience for students, learning to organize, all their workload, making sure that they understand deadlines and making sure that they can commit to deadlines. So that's why, it's really important that if your student's not good at that at least you help them keep track of all this information. The example on the right is from Boston University. And I just show it to say this is an example of a college that is test optional, and they don't require the test scores for to be considered for merit scholarships, but they do give you a clue that even though they're not requiring test scores, but your students they need to show they're at least in the caliber of a student that might receive a SAT of 1500 or an ACT of 3300. This is selective. I'm not saying that you have to have these levels to get merit scholarships at all colleges. I just wanted to show you an example from one college who kind of, gives you a little clue to say we're test optional, but we're basically looking for higher quality students that we're going to be awarding merit scholarship money to. And if you are applying to the merit money or merit scholarships as test optional, then your application needs to show in some other way that you're of that top quality or academically high as a student. Okay, so I'm kind of moving along pretty well time-wise. I'm switching now to the next subject, which is about SAI and budget. And for me, this is really what I call like know your numbers. So the numbers that you need to know are COA, which is cost of attendance. That's also the sticker price. It's the highest amount that somebody will pay to attend that college. And it includes tuition, room and board, other fees like for, and the other fees are like estimates for supplies, for travel, for medical insurance. So this is, again, the most it would cost somebody if they included all the fees possible for everything that goes on in that college and they're living on campus. The next number is student aid index. This is the number that is calculated from the federal form called the FAFSA. We have a whole separate presentation about what that formula is, the different components, how you can potentially make changes to your financial situation. And you don't personally, just so you know, you can only make significant changes if you understand the calculation and the formula well enough in advance so that you have the time to make the changes. I only say that is because you might start seeing in Facebook marketing or ads, other companies kind of saying, we can help you, get more financial aid. And to tell you the truth, if you are, even right now, if you're a family with a junior, obviously if you were a family in the fall with a senior, I hate to break the news to you, but it's too late. You can't really make any major changes that are going to reduce your SAI and get you more aid. And that's because the calculation and the formula for SAI is based on what they call prior tax year. So it's based on the 2 years, the tax years from 2 years before the fall of when your student's going to start college. So for families with their student is graduating in 2026, your student's going to start the fall of 2026, and that means already your financial aid is going to be based on your taxes that finished up the tax year of 2024. So you're done, you're set in stone. So the only families that can make changes are families with students graduating high school in 2027 and later. So if you're if student is going to graduate in 2026 and you start seeing these ads saying, oh, come to our webinar, we can help you reduce the costs of college because we can help you find more aid and reduce your SAI. I mean, go to the webinars, but you'll find out that there's nothing you can do. And it was just it's a little bit of a marketing ploy, which I don't agree with, but that's just my 2 cents. So moving on, the reason why these two numbers, cost of attendance and SAI, are important is because the colleges use those two numbers to determine how much family need your family has. They very simply take the cost of attendance, which is the most that the college is going to cost. They subtract the student aid index, which is a number that the government is calculating, saying that your family is likely to be able to pay at a minimum this amount of money to send your student to college. And if the SAI is less than the cost of attendance, then your family has need, right? And so then a college looks at how much need your family has, and they decide whether or not they're going to give you money to cover that need. Not every college does this, and even if a college offers need-based aid, they may not cover your full need. And then there are colleges that don't offer any need-based aid. But the reason why it's important to know whether or not your family has need or not is because if you find out early enough in the process, your SAI is so high, not that, just because you have an SAI doesn't mean that you can truly afford college, but it's just the way the calculation works. If your SAI is higher than most of the college cost of attendances at most colleges, that means your family is never going to show up as a family that has need. And the only way your family is going to get money from a college is if your student applies to the right college where they look attractive to that college and that college offers merit. So these are it's kind of like a branching tree to understand which branch that you need to walk down. So does your family have family need, and does the college that your student's applying to cover and offer money for family need? Or if your family doesn't have need, is your student applying to schools that offer merit scholarships? So this is all information you could figure out 2-3 years ahead of time, so you know if your student's applying to the right types of colleges. And then the last number to understand is your family's budget. All the other numbers above matter, but so does your family's budget. So the government might say your SAI is $60,000, but your family budget is $40,000. So that means you've got to look for colleges where the cost of attendance is either $40,000 or below, so that you know off the bat you'll be able to afford it, or you need to look for colleges where either with need-based aid that the college is offering or with a merit scholarship, it brings the cost below what your family's budget is, in this case, $40,000. So that's why it's really important to understand what the government's number is, what the college's philosophy is, and their policies on giving money is, and what your budget is. Good question. How do you find out your SAI before 2 years prior to graduation? Great question. The government actually has a tool. It's called SAI Estimator, or let me see, or it could be called the FAFSA Estimator. Let me just look that up quickly. Yeah, you can actually, you can type in FAFSA Estimator, and it brings you to, in Google, it will list the Federal Student Aid Estimator, and just fill in the numbers. That gives you a pretty good estimation of what your SAI is. If you're a family with a student graduating in 2026, 100% you need to know, like right now, what your SAI is. If you're a family of with a student graduating in 2027, do your SAI. Honestly, it's not going to change that much year to year. The biggest driver that as part of the calculation of the SAI is your household income. So if your household income, I mean, it contributes to over 50% of the formula. If your household income is going to stay the same year to year, then you can do your SAI now if your students graduating 2027, and kind of assume that that's going to be close to what your SAI is when they actually apply to college. There are ways to lower your SAI, but again, the biggest factor is your household income. So unless, and God forbid, you're losing your job, that would obviously impact your income, or you took a different job at a lower salary. I mean, I don't really want to give you suggestions about how to lower your household income, because they're not positive suggestions. The other thing that impacts your SAI, but it doesn't impact it at the same rate, are things like how much money you might put in 401ks, or how much money you might put in 529s. It will have an impact, but that's a much smaller impact as opposed to what your household income is. Okay, so this is a great chart. One of our partners put this together. It's, again, just an estimate to give you a quick idea of where you might fall, of what your SAI might be. And on the left is parent income, so your adjusted gross income. On the top are your assets, because those are the two components of the calculation. It's income and assets. So depending on what your assets are, you can see that a family kind of close to around 30,000, 300,000, their adjusted gross income is, and depending on how much assets they have, they start to tap out, meaning everything in red is anything, quite honestly, at like, 90 to 95,000 and above, you're not getting any need at any college. So if you're a student if you want to reduce the cost of college, you're going to have to find a college that offers merit scholarships. But if you're in this green category, you might be eligible for need-based aid at some schools, and you could always be eligible for merit scholarships if your student applies to the right school. So any student, regardless if they have financial need or not, can still be eligible for merit scholarships. It's just not the reverse. Any student that's eligible for merit scholarship, they are not always eligible for need-based aid. So in fact, most students who get merit scholarships aren't eligible for need-based aid. Okay, so here are other examples. Again, just to kind of show you how the math works. On the left is a family that has an SAI of 30,000. And so your SAI stays the same, right, regardless of what college you're looking at, but the cost of attendance, the COA at colleges changes. One college could be a lot less expensive than another college. So if you remember back to the formula, which is cost of attendance minus SAI is your family's need is going to change depending on the college and the cost of attendance. So in the first example, the cost of attendance is 50,000, so the family's need is 20,000. And in the second example, the cost of attendance is much more expensive, and it's 80,000, and so the family's need is 50,000. So now you know what your need is in that college. Again, we don't know at college A or at the first college or at the second college whether or not they will cover any of the family's need, but at least you know that you have financial need, and you're going to want to now find a college that will cover some of that need. And again, those are numbers, and when we get to the section on the common data set that we can look at, and I'll show you what those numbers are. So in the example on the right, here's a family with a much higher SAI, and most likely they're not going to receive need-based aid at any school because their SAI is over the cost of attendance of most of the colleges. And in this case, again, the first example, the cost of attendance is 40,000, clearly well below that family's $90,000 SAI. So they're not going to receive any need-based aid. They're not eligible for need-based aid. The only possibility is that they could receive merit scholarship if the college offers merit scholarships. And again, in the second example, this is, again, another school where this family is not eligible for need-based aid because they don't have any need. And the only possibility that they'll receive money is if the college offers merit scholarships. So this, again, you can see why it's really important to understand your SAI, understand whether or not your family is going to have financial need, and then understand the policies of the college. Do they give money to financial need, and or do they give merit scholarships? So going back to the person who asked, how do you find out your SAI? I'm so glad you asked that, because as you can see from this process, whether you're a year out or 2 years out or even 3 years out, it's important to estimate what your SAI is so you have a better understanding of how to approach the process.
That's not too bad.
What does that mean? Okay. Sorry, I think, let me just.
I don't know, but she said if your SAI is in the 40s.
Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to throw in your budget. Okay. Your budget is from you. Nobody can say whether it's right or wrong. You need to sit down with your family and figure out, obviously, hopefully you've been able to save something, but what do you have to contribute each year towards college? I'm just going to, give this one example. This particular family had the SAI of 90,000. Okay, that's what the government, thinks that at a minimum that family can pay. But they've decided that they only want to spend 45,000, and there can be lots of reasons for this. And nobody no college, nobody else can say whether you're right or wrong. It's your money, and this is how much you either have or you're willing to spend. And I'll just give you one example of a family that we worked with that, quite honestly, was, somewhat well off. They probably could, they had a high SAI. They probably could have spent the money of what their SAI is, but they had other things going on in their household. They had other, factors. And just to tell you some, one was they had a child with disabilities, so they were saving to make sure that they could, help them later on in life. That doesn't come up in the FAFSA, so the government doesn't know that. They also had an elderly parent that they were helping to support. That doesn't come up in the FAFSA, so the government doesn't know that. And then the third thing was that the student wanted to go on to medical school. So whatever they had saved, they wanted to try and use for both undergraduate and medical school. That doesn't come up on the FAFSA. So that's what I mean. Coming up with your budget, it's whatever your issues are, whatever money you've saved, and whatever your feeling is towards how much you want to put towards college, and whatever you might, and whatever other financial, factors you have weighing on your family that the FAFSA and the government doesn't know about. So in this case, the family might have said, my budget's $45,000, and that's what I'm going to try and look for. And again, knowing these numbers earlier on in the process helps so much to guide your search. And again, nothing right or wrong about whatever your numbers come out to be. So if you know your budget's $45,000, then there's a few ways you can start researching. You can start looking for colleges off the bat that have a cost of attendance that's $45,000 or below. So your student might not receive any money from those colleges, but you could afford it because it's below your budget. That's one way. The second is that again, you need to know whether or not you're going to get financial need or you're looking for a college with merit scholarships. But in this case, this family knew that the only money that they were going to get was through merit scholarships. So then they could start looking at colleges that, if they can estimate what the merit scholarship amount is that their student would receive, and they would subtract that from the cost of attendance, that might get them closer to their budget. Again, this is just an example where there's schools that they were looking at where the student could get a merit scholarship of $25,000. So that got them closer to their budget. But then they would have to decide, how were they going to make up the difference? Was the student going to take out loans? Were they going to take out loans? Or were they going to decide to add more to their budget? But you can see how you can start estimating how close you can get to your budget, or how you can start estimating what your net cost will be at various colleges before your student even puts pen to paper to write an essay. You could and you should be understanding these numbers, and they might be part of the decision process about whether or not your student applies. Now, nobody can tell you with 100% guarantee how much a college is truly going to offer. As you can see, the past 2 months or so, things have gone haywire, crazy in lots of different areas of life and the economy and even higher ed. So things can change, and that will and might affect, it will affect, what colleges decide to do, but they still have several months, for making decisions for next year's class. So what if I can't say to you today, I can guarantee you that College A is going to give your student a merit scholarship of $25,000. I can't. All I can say is students in the past, as of last year, who looked like your student received this, on average, received this amount of money. So you can estimate what you think your student will get. And honestly, people can estimate usually within, this isn't maybe as close as you want to be, but within, $10,000, maybe within $5,000. That's, better than nothing. So at least it gets you closer to whether or not this school is within your range. And again, you can do those estimates today. I'm going to show you where you get the data from. Don't wait until your student applies and they get accepted, and then you figure out whether or not you can afford it. You can do all of that math way before you might even decide to visit the college. So this is, again, like philosophical, how you want to handle it. Some parents are willing to have their students apply to colleges where they're not quite sure if they're going to get enough money and they're not quite sure it's affordable, but they're willing to kind of like put it out there as a reach, a financial reach, as long as they know that there's other colleges on the list where their student, can get money. Other families say, if I can't guarantee for sure I can afford it, not going to let you apply. This is your family's decision. I was just looking, I think I threw it away, but I saw recently, I was corresponding with a mother who was doing something, this is just a terminology we called chasing merit. Well, what that means is that she and her daughter desperately wanted to make sure that her daughter could get as much merit scholarship as possible. So what that meant is that sometimes to chase merit, you do need to apply to more schools than the normal student because you're not quite sure how much money you're going to get from each college. They ended up applying to 20 schools. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but from what I remember, honestly, I think she got into 16 out of the 20 schools. And each one of those 16 schools she got money from. She got a huge range of money, meaning like some schools gave her 10,000, some schools gave her 45,000. And so, they could estimate in advance kind of which schools would kind of give what, but it's still, when you are chasing merit, it is a little better to apply to more schools. It's, basically you have more options of what's going to come through. Okay, let me move on. Okay, now I'm going to the section about the common data set. Just curious, anybody familiar with the common data set? Have you looked at a common data set before? Please, if you could share in the chat, that'd be great. While you're sharing, I can see somebody asked, is SAI based on adjusted gross income? It is. It is based on your adjusted gross income. Okay, so one person has looked at the common data set. Okay, so I have done lots of analysis of the CDS. That's good. That's great. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the common data set is data that the colleges share, mostly publicly, and then they also give it to 3 organizations. The College Board collects the common data set, and I'll show you what the common data set looks like. This all really started with US News and World Report. This was the data that US News and World Report asked colleges to share to them, that they then use this information to come up with their rankings. And then there's a third company called Peterson's, which is a private company, and they compile the common data set information from all the colleges, and then they license that data out. So if you're another company that wants to use college data, you might be working with Peterson's because that's the only place where you can license the common data set. Quite honestly, that's what we do because it's just easier. So that's where we get a lot of data from. The other place where there's a lot of college data is the government. It's called IPEDS, but there's a timing issue between data that's available through IPEDS versus data that's available through the common data set. That's one issue. So IPEDS data is a little later. There's more of a time lag. Usually that's 18 months, sometimes 24 months old. The common data set is about like a year old. And the other difference is that the common data set just has more detailed data that the government doesn't have. So that's why a lot of people like the common data set better than the government data. But it's government data is free, so that's not a bad place to start. Okay, let me just give you a little lesson on the timing of common data set and kind of when you see different numbers, like what they mean. So common data set is based on the data for the class, both the freshmen and the undergraduates that start in the fall. So the example is this fall was fall of 2024. And colleges collect all of the information for the common data set based on that incoming class that starts or who return in fall of 2024. So if the students don't start school until the fall of 2024, it takes the college a few months to kind of get their information together. It's actually all done through, and it's called the Office of Institutional Research. That's the official department usually at most colleges. So they are going to different departments throughout the college and they're saying, you know, can you tell us this information? Financial aid, we need this information. Admissions, we need this information. And just logistically, it takes some months to pull it together and then to clean it and to put it into shape. So most colleges don't usually release their latest set of common data set information until like spring, around now, like maybe March, April. They're putting their information out on their websites. And so the most recent common data set data would be for it would be 2024, 2025 common data set, right? So the 2024, the first number is the fall, is the year that the fall that the students have started. And then the 2025, it covers the academic year. But just one more thing to think about. The students who started in the fall of 2024, right, their admissions data is from the winter of 2023 and the winter of 2024. So the admissions data is from the 23-24 cycle, and it's going to be reported in the 2024-2025 common data set. That might be a lot to kind of think about, but I just wanted to give you a perspective of what the numbers mean or what the dates mean. So we don't have admissions data for like the class that just ended. It's just, I mean, we might have like obviously from some specific schools because they release it, or maybe we have early decision data from some schools because they released it, but we don't have it for all the schools across the board because they haven't released their common data set information. That information, the admissions data from this particular season that just ended, won't be available until the common data set of 2025, 2026. This isn't bad. I just want to, again, give you relevance. Admission data doesn't change that much year to year. If you looked at admissions data over 5 years, 7 years, yes, you'd see changes, but from year to year, there's not major changes. So I'm not so concerned that we're using, you know, admissions data from a year before. It's just more important that the admissions data and the financial aid data is all from like a similar time cycle, and we're comparing apples to apples across all colleges. Okay, so that's just a little lesson in the timing of the data. So if you want to see a college's common data set, all you got to do is Google the name of the college and the word common data set. And usually what's going to pop up is just what I show here. This is Tulane's, and it's going to list all of the common data sets that they have available. You see actually that when I took this picture, Tulane has their most recent common data set available, and they might show historical common data sets. So one other thing is that even though, like in this example, Tulane's most recent 2024-2025 common data set is available, most college websites don't have an updated common data set until the summer. And that's, again, just a timing issue. Tulane just put theirs out. So now there's 3,000 colleges, right? So a company like Peterson's has to compile the data from all 3,000 colleges. They're all putting it out at a slightly different time. And so they don't get the chance to pull it all together, to clean it, and to put it into the structure that they need to. And they usually don't release the common data set for all the colleges until like the July, August timeframe. Just giving you a timing perspective, but that doesn't mean that the data that's available on college websites or college search sites is bad to use now. It's just that know that usually it gets updated in the July, August timeframe. But as a family with a junior, I wouldn't wait for this updated data. I mean, to be doing your searching, you should be starting now. You can kind of, revisit the data in July and August. but that shouldn't hold you back from starting your research now. Okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to pull up an actual common data set so we can look at it, and I'm going to point out some of the what I think is the important information to see. Okay, let me. Okay, let me share back again. Okay, can you see this is just my blank Google search? Just want to make sure you guys can see the right screen. Great, okay. Okay, so I'm going to type in Tulane, oops, here, Tulane Common Data Set. And there you see what I showed before. And we're going to go to Tulane's most recent common data set. And as the name implies, this format is what you're going to see at most colleges. I'd say 95% of the colleges, when they share their common data set, it looks like this. This is exactly the documentation that they are filling out and sending to those organizations. Sometimes a college does a spin on their format. They show it to you differently. Maybe they think it's easier to look at it. Personally, I've gotten so used to seeing it in this format that I kind of just like to see it like this at all the college websites, but they differ. So I'm not going to go through every section at all because we don't have enough time. I'm going to go really quickly through what I think the most important sections are. This is just general information. This is enrollment, how many students actually enrolled, male versus female, undergraduate versus graduate. You might be important to you, again, to know the male versus female ratio. That might be important. And also to know, how many graduate students there are versus undergraduates, because that might show a preference for where the college is going to put their resources. I'm just going to highlight at Tulane, because I happen to know this, that you can see their population of women versus men it's a much more higher population of women. So again, this is how you can use the data to kind of find what I say clues. So since Tulane, for lots of reasons, and I'm not going to go into them now, has a higher female population, then most likely most colleges want to balance it. So that means that they're probably trying to attract, admit, enroll men at a higher rate than they are women. So my guess is if you broke out the admission rate for men versus women, it's a higher admit rate for male versus females, because again, they're trying to pull in more men. So this might be the reverse at some schools. At some schools, the female population might be lower than the male population. So it might be slightly easier for women to be accepted. So again, this is why looking at some of these numbers can give you a clue as to different priorities that the colleges might have during their admissions process. Okay. The next section is about, this is the admission numbers related to the class that just started in the fall of 2024. So this shows you, you know what, let me, oops, go the wrong way. Let me increase this. Okay. So again, this shows you the number of, it breaks down male versus female, number of men who applied versus the number of women who applied. Then it shows you the number of men who were admitted versus the number of women who admitted. And you can do the percentages if you want. And then it shows you how many men enrolled versus how many women enrolled. Again, this is great information to understand at different colleges to see what their rates are. Oh, and here they are showing in-state versus out-of-state. This might not make that much of a difference because this is Tulane's a private institution, but if this is a state institution, you might obviously see that the in-state numbers are much higher than the out-of-state numbers, or maybe they're 50-50. But again, this starts to show you that, getting in as an out-of-state student to a state flagship is going to be much harder versus if you're an in-state student applying to that same college. And then they have the numbers on the wait list. This isn't probably honestly going to make any difference to your student to apply, but if it's next year and your student has been placed on the waiting list, you're probably going to want to come to this number and see how many students did they place on the wait list, how many students who were offered a spot on the wait list decided to actually put themselves on the wait list, and how many students actually were offered a spot off of the wait list. Again, this varies year by year, so I'm not quite sure you can actually learn that much from it, but it just gives you a sense of like maybe every year Tulane is accepting a lot of students on the wait list. So that might give you a clue that that's their policy about how they handle admissions. Like they don't want to deny somebody, so instead they'll just put them on the wait list. Versus other schools, their wait list numbers are very small because they might say, we're just going to make the decision. We're going to either accept or deny somebody. We don't like putting them on the wait list. So again, this is like more philosophical about how a college wants to manage and handle their admissions process. Okay. Oh, this is a very interesting section, section C7. This is what they call academic or non-academic factors. To me, this is kind of like a rubrics of what the admissions office kind of uses when they're looking at students' applications. It tells you which pieces of the application they think are very important, or considered or not even considered. And some factors are kind of across the board. All colleges say this, and then you'll see that other factors vary college by college. Most colleges are going to have these, at least the two of these, as most important. Rigor of your school record is usually always very important, and the academic GPA is also very important. Class rank, it varies because some schools don't even look at class rank anymore. And other schools like Tulane, obviously they're saying it's important. So here's what's kind of interesting is Tulane is test optional, right? But they're still saying that test scores are important. So, and we're going to look at one other thing on the common data set. So this is kind of, this idea of test optional it's a little wishy-washy, right? It gives, in my opinion, colleges a cover to say, well, you can decide apply with test scores or not, but you really don't know on the admission side whether or not they use the test scores heavily or they don't. But I think that this section gives you a hint. So to me, there'll be other schools that you might look at that are test optional, and they'll say test scores are just considered. So to me, that is truly a test optional school because they're saying apply with the test score or not. We might look at it, we might not. It's not as important as other factors. But Tulane actually says it's important. So to me, that they're test optional, but they're kind of leaning towards, well, we like it if you send a test score in. That's my personal interpretation. Okay, obviously, essays are important, recommendations are important. Something else, extracurricular activities, volunteer work is important. You might find in another school that volunteer work they might have in the considered category. So if I look at the fact that volunteer work is important, then to me what this says is for Tulane, I might want to make sure that whether it's in the supplemental essays or in the main essay for Tulane, that as a student, I make sure I highlight that I've done volunteer work because it's obviously very important to them. And so if I can show it to them in my application, that might help with the admission. Something else here, it's called level of applicant's interest, or another phrase that we use is called demonstrated interest. And Tulane is saying it's important. So what that means is that they are looking at, did the student visit? Did the student attend an information session? Did the student open up our emails? Did the student interact with the admissions office? These are all different ways that a student could be showing their interest. And since this is in the important category, what Tulane is saying is if they potentially are comparing two students that are very close and one has showed interest and the other hasn't, they might go with the student that showed interest because that's a criteria that's important to them. you will definitely see other colleges that rank this as just considered or not considered at all. So again, this is important to understand what these factors are and how important or not important these factors are to each individual college. Okay, I'm really gonna skip ahead. Wait, there's one. Oh, here. This is the section. Not every college fills this in, but I also find this interesting. This is looking at the percentage of students that enrolled and what percentage of those students actually submitted a test score. So for Tulane, they are saying of the students that enrolled, 13% submitted their SAT score and 28% submitted their ACT score. This doesn't tell us what percentage of students applied and submitted the test scores, but you can only imagine it's higher, right? Because they probably took a subset of the students who applied with test scores. And the other thing is, this isn't 100%, but most students are not taking the SAT and the ACT, and they're definitely not submitting both scores. So you could also add this together. It's not perfect math, but and you can say, 41% of students who enrolled also submitted a test score. So again, to me, that kind of says Tulane is leaning towards using the test score more so than other test optional schools might. Okay, it breaks down students by the range. This I'm going to show you that information a little bit later someplace else. Okay, I know I'm already going over, so I'm just going to jump quickly to what is section H, which is the financial aid information. Okay, section H is all about need-based aid and merit scholarship. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but what we do, and I'll show you in the tool that we have, is we take these numbers and we do the calculations for you. But the calculations that are important to look at are what percentage of students applied for financial aid? Of the students who applied for financial aid, what percentage were actually deemed to have financial aid? And then what percentage of the students who had financial need were actually given financial aid? So those numbers are all here. You can actually calculate that by looking at the raw numbers. And then of the students who received financial need, how much of their need was actually covered? And that number is here. It's in line I. It says, on average, the percentage of need that was met by students who were awarded any need-based aid. So what this is saying is that, I'm just going to round it up to 98%, that students who attended Tulane and who applied for financial aid and were determined to have financial aid, then Tulane covered 98% of that need. So this is going back to the formula I showed you of cost of attendance minus SAI. That family need, Tulane covered 98% of it. That's pretty good. So if you were a family that had financial need and your student was accepted to Tulane, then Tulane's going to offer you 98% of whatever your need was. So this is where it works out that you understand you have financial need and your student applies to a college that is going to cover that financial need. There's a lot of colleges where that 98% is much lower. It could be 50%, it could be 40%, it could be 30%. So that's why some families who don't do this research are surprised when their students get their offer and they say, well, but we're eligible for need-based aid and we didn't get any aid. Well, did you apply to a college that's actually going to cover your need? So just because you have aid doesn't mean the college is going to give you money to cover the need. You have to find the right college that's willing to offer the money to cover your family's need. Okay, skipping ahead, this little set of box shows you merit scholarship money. So this is line N is the number of students who had no financial need but who were awarded non-need-based scholarship. So what that means is they were awarded merit scholarship. So 416 students who go to Tulane who do not have any need-based aid got merit scholarships. And on average, their merit scholarship was $21,000. So this is how you can start to estimate. A, are you a family who isn't going to get need-based aid at Tulane? Okay. And then of that family, we can actually look at those numbers. I don't know offhand what percentage of those students actually got merit scholarships. And most likely the students that got merit scholarships were students that were the academically strongest who applied to Tulane. So you're going to want to know, are you a family that is not going to get need-based aid? And then how does your students' stats, their SAT GPA, compare to the normal, to the range of academic numbers or stats that they normally accept at Tulane? If your student is at the high end, then they are most likely one of that 416 students that's going to be offered offered merit scholarships. So that's how you can start to figure out, is my student likely to get merit scholarships at this school? And then what's the average amount that the school offers? So this is one school's common data set. You can pull up every school that you're interested in and look at their common data set. But what's really hard, if you're researching common data set, this A, takes time, and B, you have no idea, like, what other schools are out there? What other schools should I be looking at where my student can get merit scholarships? Or what other schools even offer merit scholarships? You have no idea until you start to research individual schools or until you start to pull up their common data set. So we created a tool to help you do this research. Let me jump. Okay, can you guys see this? This is our tool called Insights. Just want to make sure that my Zoom sharing skipped or is showing the right screen. Anybody can just give me a thumbs up if you're looking at the same screen that I think you are. Okay, let me jump into this and show you how this works. So now I've given you the philosophy behind what merit scholarships are. I've told you how to understand the numbers, and then I've told you where to find the numbers. You can do this on your own. It's just work. So we've done more of that work for you to make it easier so you can jump in and just do the filtering. Okay, so you can go to, it's called, the website is insights.roadtocollege.com. You can create a free account. There's a free version and a paid version. The free version, you get to see some of the information. You get to do a few filters, but you don't get to do unlimited filtering. On the paid version, you can do as much as you want. You get to see all the data. You can make as many lists as you want. And you also get access to other content that we've created, other videos or other live sessions that you can attend. But let's go into this, and I can quickly show you what this looks like. And then I think all of this information that I shared with you tonight kind of starts to come together. Okay, I'm going to go to the Power Search. So basically, we have a whole database of the common data set. So you don't need to do the research of the common data set. You might want to still go to some school's common data set, but you don't have to research individual colleges. Okay, I just put the URL in the list. I think somebody's asking, will I share the website again? So if you go to the Power Search, right, you can look by individual schools. You can search by majors. You can search by location. But what I like to do to find schools with merit scholarship is I like to go to these filters on the left-hand side, and you can search in lots of different ways. I can search purely by cost of attendance. Remember the example I gave where somebody had a certain budget and then they wanted to find colleges with the cost of attendance below that budget? If you had a budget, let's say I want to find a private college, and my budget is between $30,000 to $50,000. Well, here are all the colleges that have the cost of attendance between those two numbers, and you can search away. Okay, so that's one way of using this. Another way is I can search by show me all the schools that offer a merit scholarship between $10,000 and $40,000. Okay, these are all 689 colleges that offer merit scholarships between those dollar amounts. I can now sort these by, let's sort them by average merit. So Clarkson gives an average merit of just under 40,000, 39,995. And now, this is in order of which gives the most merit scholarship. I could sort these by ED, admit rates. These are colleges that have early decision rates. Or I can sort them by early action rate or overall admit rate. So you can sort them by any of these criteria. Here's another way that I like to use this, and it's by looking at test scores. And the only reason that we use test scores, even though in this world a lot of students might apply test optional, is because colleges share the most information about their test scores. If you look through Insights, you'll notice that a lot of colleges have a dash for GPA. It's not because we don't want the GPA, we wish they had it. Colleges just don't share as much information about the GPA. And I used to be really annoyed about this. I'm still annoyed about it, but at least I've gotten a decent answer as to why. A dean actually recently told me, and the reason is that they don't share that much about GPA information, not because they don't want to. They just don't have the time to recalculate everybody's GPA and put them into the classifications the way the Common Data Set asks for it. Because as we all know, every high school has a different way that they might be calculating the GPA. And for colleges to recalculate every student's GPA and then share it in the tables that the Common Data Set is asking for, they just don't have the time to do it. So that's why GPA information is not shared as widespread as we would like. But because ACT and SAT are already standardized tests, and because the colleges easily get that information, that's why test score information is just more easily shared. And so that's the reason why we use it for searching purposes, because almost every school has shared their test information. And I'd say probably 50% of colleges share their GPA information, which is very frustrating because in this world of test optional, right, you want to be able to search by GPA, and yet the colleges just don't share it. So my recommendation is always I actually believe that students should take the SAT, ACT just to have a baseline. Again, they might choose not to study for it. They might choose not to submit it, but at least you've got an idea of what potentially what they might get. And then if your student doesn't take it, or maybe they don't do as well as you think that they could do if they were going to study, what you can do is take their GPA and convert it to what a potential SAT or ACT might do. And there's a website called Prep Scholar. Here, I'll put it in the chat. And they have a very good chart. If you just Google SAT or GPA SAT conversion or GPA ACT conversion, Prep Scholar's chart is usually going to come up, and you can kind of get an estimate of the range of what, oh, my student has a 3.7, they're likely to have gotten, a 1250 to 1400 on the SAT. And then you'll have just a general range of a test score to use, at least for searching purposes. Okay, so let's say you have a test score that you can use. Then you can put in that range of, let's say, 1200 to 1300. And then you want to find the schools where this 1200 to 1300 puts your student in the top of the academic range, or at the 75th percentile. Okay, so now I know that there's 347 schools that if my student applies, they're at the top of that academic range. So that gives me a better sense that they're likely to be accepted. And then of these schools, I want to see which ones have merit scholarships. I can add on the filter here of average merit award to this 347, but I don't know what the range is. So what I'm going to do is sort this list instead by average merit. So now all of a sudden I have a list where I know my students' academic test scores put them at the high end of what the students who normally attend this college come with. And I know that these schools also offer merit. So now I've got the two criteria I need. Now I'm going to start looking at these colleges and hopefully find a few of these colleges, with my students that they're interested in applying to, because if my student applies to some of these colleges, they're likely to get in and they're also likely to get merit. And now I can estimate my net cost. So let's just take Susquehanna, who happens to be a pretty generous college. So their cost of attendance is around $7,300. They're giving out average merit aid of $40,000. If my student applies, they have these test scores. Now, I can now estimate that if my student attends, it's probably going to cost me around $33,000 for my student to attend. Again, so now I can compare that. How does that compare to my budget? Now I have a sense that I might or I may not be able to afford it, but I know where that college is going to end up from a net cost perspective. I have a general idea. I can't give you the guarantee it's going to be $33,000, but it's probably going to be between 33 and maybe 40,000 on the top end. And that it's going to be, close in that range. There's another piece of information that we have that it's very interesting for a lot of people. I'm going to click on Susquehanna. We have information called crowdsourced offers. So what we've been collecting for really the last 5 years are actual offers from families who have gotten merit scholarships or need-based aid from Susquehanna. So you can look at those actual offers to see, okay, Susquehanna said that they give around $40,000 in merit, but is that really true? Like, is that what people are actually getting, or is that what Susquehanna just claims? So if you click on the crowdsourced offers, this is from this year. This is from the academic year of students who are going to enroll in college in 2025, 2026. This is what they have started to get. And we put them in order of SAI. So you should find what your SAI range is. Most families who are going to get merit scholarships have an SAI of above 60,000 because they're not going to have any need-based aid. And you can see that this is what the numbers are of the merit scholarships that those students are receiving from Susquehanna. So that actually kind of fits with what they reported. These students, you can also look at their SAT or ACT. You can see if well, so far all of these students submitted a test score, and you can see what their GPA is. You can see when they applied. And here's a student, offer 17, who applied test optional, and they still got the 45,000. Here's another student who applied test optional. They applied early action and they got 44,000. So looks like Susquehanna is pretty true to what their average is, and they're giving out good merit. So this just kind of confirms, hopefully it confirms in most cases, that the number that the school reported is actually the types of numbers that they're actually offering in merit scholarships. Okay, that's kind of my presentation. I was a little over. Thank you for those who hung there with me. And I would encourage you to at least make a free account in Insights. And so the fee is, there's a monthly fee, and then there's an annual fee. And then there's 3 levels to Insights. And again, there's what we call Essential, Plus, or Premium. If you get a Plus or Premium level, you get access. We have monthly webinars with a admissions officer, with a private college counselor, with a financial aid or college financial funding consultant. And we hit on all topics related to college admissions and paying for college in much more detail than webinars that we might offer to the public. So that's pretty valuable to a lot of people. And then we also have a private Facebook group that if you have a particular question or want to ask other parents in the Facebook group, you can ask your question there. And we have a college counselor who monitors that group, so you can be rest assured that you're getting answers from a professional who's always kind of there to help with whatever issues you might have. Okay, so somebody's asking, do you include any international schools in Insights? As of now, we don't include international schools. But we're gonna look to include schools, start to include some international schools over the summer. I'm actually not quite sure what data there is available for international schools. I mean, there's obviously we can have data about the majors that they have and maybe admit rates and what their costs are. I don't know how much data we can find relative if they offer any types of scholarships, but we're going to start looking because obviously that's become a stronger interest of families. And I know we can definitely include Canadian schools. I'm just not quite sure if we can include European schools. I mean, we can include them. I'm not quite sure what information we can get about them, but we're going to look into that. Okay, well, good night, everyone. Hang in there, and I appreciate you staying up late with me. Take care. Bye.